So I made another video about the North Node and Scorpio placement in the natal birth chart already. And there's so much information that I unpack in that video and delve into. And, I feel really inspired to make sort of the separate video sort of as I'm going through reading Astrology for the Soul by Jan Spiller, which is a book that I most recently got just the other day, and I started reading it. And so, something, that's really profound to discuss, sort of breaking the placement down, since it is just such a fascinating placement to me. Especially because my North Node is in Taurus. And so, with this placement, something really important to understand is a lot of the attributes of the placement deals with your relationships to other people. Now, Labor North Node is more about the collaboration, the relationships, the bonding, the connecting, that kind of thing where you're relating with another. But, Scorpio goes deeper where, a huge part of it is about being an investigator, being a detective, and developing an open-mindedness and a curiosity, going, oh, that's interesting, or wondering why this thing is a certain way. It's very, you could correlate it to the Gemini North Node a little bit in that regard, because one of the parts of Sagittarius South Node is dogma, feeling like, you know it all, you have so much wisdom. It can lend itself to teaching, preaching and becoming very defensive and sort of, going on your own way and not getting back to learning new information and, connecting with another person and having those conversations. With Scorpio, it deals more with becoming a curious investigator in relationships instead of imposing your values and the way that you have done things and the way that you're so used to doing things in the the right way, or what you feel is the right way of doing things. And it's about opening your mind and your heart to see that it's not the only way and one size does not fit all. And the image that I get when it comes to this sort of, having conversations is maybe when you're doing things collaboratively with somebody else. And you are sort of teaching them. And the South Node in Taurus has a lot of advice, that's very practical. You know how to do it, sort of, very pragmatic. These are the steps to follow to get to this particular point. However, it's super important for the people that have this placement not to try to mold or control or limit themselves with their ways of doing things, and also limit other ways of approaching something. So this can be, the example that I was reading in the book was about baking a cake and sort of teaching somebody to, make a cake or or just doing something, making a recipe. It can be getting somewhere. It can be a variety of things. It can even be ironing, or sewing. Whatever it is. This is about, I think, on the sort of, I want to say mundane, and I don't mean mundane in terms of a global perspective. I mean from a very baseline without the spiritual part of this, but just now we're moving into a territory of life lessons. And I think with this placement, when you get into the nitty gritty of what it's about, I feel that you move away from the spiritual and then get into more life lesson type stuff. Which, those are really life lessons and spirituality. Those are really intertwined in a way. But it talks about really, there's a sort of teamwork makes the dream work. Where, it's so important that if you are, reaching out, and if you choose to reach help, reach out to somebody else. And this is, I'm actually going to say, and this is what I mean by stepping away from the complexity of the sign of Scorpio, is a basic life lesson. And it's about sort of, receiving help openly, humbly, and taking in that solution and applying it and testing it out. So this can be where, there's, again, a stubbornness to do things a certain way. But when you sort of, let go of that need for sameness, or the need to get something in a certain way, and what you gain is a more energetic and spiritual connection. Maybe you lose something material, or you step out of something that you're accustomed to, or something that your way of doing things, or something that you have, or way of being, or routine, that you're in a rut, and branch out and allow sort of change and transformation, and allow sort of another approach, and something new, new energy, a new sort of, again, way of doing something. And so when you can, because, it talks about, one of the things that was speaking about was that your values can be limiting. And when we can, seeing people from, interacting with somebody who may have different ways of doing things, we can sort of, understand that way, and implement it and integrate it. So, it's about sort of offering what you can offer without making it about you, what you want. Because, that's a really huge, and, really, the book really delves into the psychology of the placement. And, there was something else that I was going to say to this, is this can be really very collaborative and open, in terms of the energy. And, the energy of sharing, sort of having ideas and things flowing, and chemistry bouncing off one and the other, is, super important, to, step into and embrace with this particular placement. And so, in terms of values, becoming attached to certain values can where you're stuck in a certain place. And, for example, I was watching a film about a grandmother who was not opening up to the idea and the notion that now we live in a technology world and now you would need to use your card when you are paying for food, or I think it goes back to using your phone in the modern day and age. And actually, I will honestly say that my grandma has this particular placement: South Node in Taurus, North Node in Scorpio. And I want to talk about that for a moment, because when you are growing and when you are living, I sort of notice when I do these, I look up and it's sort of hard to connect to the camera. But so anyway, I hope it doesn't come across. But so when you go through your life and you become, I'm going to make up a word here, or a phrase: ready art in the works. Um, why did I think of that phrase? I don't know. But this is sort of a rigid, you know, look at this particular placement as someone who has worked so hard their whole life. And I'm just saying this in general. As you grow older, you learn to be self-sufficient. You learn how to make a living for yourself. The value of hard work, and that's definitely a talent and a gift that the Taurus South Node comes in with, is empowering others to do it themselves. Really knowing what they value, knowing what they want, and really knowing how to put the work in. But when we're sort of so attached to a certain way of being, of doing something, and we've, done it, and, what, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And so, I just want to throw out the idea of older people and being stuck in their own ways of doing things instead of maybe opening up to people that may be younger than them. Now, I will say that someone that I knew in the past told me this particular thing, and I'm relating this to this film that I'm talking about, is, the world is changing, so, allow yourself to change with it. It's not exactly what he said, but I want to put it into my own words. That's something more, that I believe. So in this film, the grandmother was very adamant and reluctant to get a phone, use the phone, connect, and accept the idea that people regularly use their phones to connect with other people, to do these things. And it's this accepting of new ways of being, of new forms. This could be new ideas, of new um, emotions, experiences, and also, your emotions and what you're feeling and being vulnerable. But that's kind of a whole other conversation. And sort of, knowing that you may have a lot of wisdom and you may know a lot and have all this experience. However, um, you know, part of wisdom is dumb, is not knowing, of continually, there's something about that the truest wisdom or something like that is not thinking that you know all about any given thing. Is, part of it is dumb, or you're, you don't know it all, that you're continually learning and growing. It's a sort of flow of growth, new ideas, things coming and going, you giving off your ideas and then receiving and sort of having that energy bounce back and forth, that, flow of things coming from you, at, you giving and receiving is a huge part of this on a psychological level. And, y- you know, and so in this film, what ended up happening was, someone sat down, with this grandmother and then sort of told his story and his experience. And when the Scorpio North Node person can open up, listen, choose receptivity, really, um, sort of, hold space for this person's story or experience and this idea, then that's where, some growth can happen. Um, and also, another thing that I was reading is certain talents that other people have. And I don't want to continually use that word and, repeat, other people, over and over again. But it also is speaking about talents, about, um, of not having to own things. This is not just material things, but your ideas, your ways of doing things. Yeah, so, um, sort of, having that attachment, allowing in new things and new, again, energy into your life. Um, and so, yeah, that is really just some of what I am reading about of this placement. Is sort of, this is this person's idea. This person, had this idea or this way of doing something. And it's not about closing off. And yeah, so, there is a fear of losing control, of losing what you're used to, of losing that security, and that familiarity that you're really used to. Because Taurus is such a fixed sign. And I think that South Node in that sign really reveals Taurus at a deeper, more karmic level, when it's taken to more of the shadow expressions. Of course, the upside's present, being present, the sensuality, so much with the positive side of the sign. And I think when you study the North Node in Scorpio, then you may have a very different look at the sign of Scorpio. You may not see it in the same light again. And I would say that that's certainly true. So it's so interesting. You can learn about the different signs in many different areas and many aspects of it through each of the planets, bringing about a different flavor or a different side or different qualities, bringing out different qualities of that sign, and how that planet expresses itself through that sign and what that planet reveals about certain layers of that sign. And astrology is really multifaceted. It has a lot of layers. Um, and this is really where, learning about the nodes is a huge and profound part of it that can really, unpack those layers of the depth and complexity of astrology and, beyond sun signs. Um, so, um, that is what I just want to say. I may do another video if I feel inspired to do it, and talk about more about what I am reading and what I'm coming to understand about this placement and other placements in astrology. That's it for now.